Hey everyone, and thanks for joining me this evening. We're going to be talking about something that's all over our email, all over our social media, especially obviously if you're involved in the real estate investment world, and that's this whole subject of a real estate commission just fiasco. What's happening with real estate commissions? And I just want to take a few minutes tonight to look at different perspectives from a seller, from a buyer, from a listing agent, and from a selling agent, and see how this is going to impact us and see how we can use this to our advantage, obviously, as real estate investors. So how is all this going to impact us? Let's step back a minute. Let's get a little background on what I'm talking about, and then we'll go forward and give you a few ideas. Real estate commissions, it's kind of a standard practice for many, many years. 6% real estate commission split up between a listing agent, someone that lists the property, and a buyer agent, somebody that brings the buyer. And they generally split that 3%, goes to their brokerage, and they get a percentage of that. It kind of came down a little bit over the last X amount of years. It came down to 5% in many metro areas, and it's kind of stayed that way. And what happened is a bunch of sellers got together, basically hired an attorney, and they felt like the real estate associations around the country were in essence colluding, basically holding sellers hostage to pay these real estate commissions. Now again, realtors, they're always going to say, the boards, the powers to be are always going to say that real estate commissions have always been negotiable. But in truth, is that really true? They'd always say, hey, if you don't offer X amount to the buyer broker, they're not going to show your property. They're not going to make that property a priority. Your house might sit on the market a little longer. You might have to lower the price. So you're hurting yourself by not offering that commission. And folks, it's gotten expensive. When you sell a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 house, you're talking about $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. You get up into the upper reaches, $1 million, $1.5 million. You're talking about 30, 40 grand just on one side of the real estate commission. I sold a property last year in South Carolina for $665,000, a property I've owned for a while. And I used a local realtor because they knew the market and they had different marketing and good buyers. But at the end of the day, I paid 5% on $665,000, and $35,000. That's kind of hard to swallow after you've owned a property for so long and you put so much blood, sweat, and tears in it. So I can understand the impact and feeling of, wow, they're getting paid a lot of money for maybe not doing as much work as maybe some of them are contending to do. So anyways, the courts heard these cases and came back and slapped all these different brokerages around the country, the big boys, with just huge fines. And a lot of them settled out of court, kind of got it behind them. And the resolution was basically that come next week, come very shortly, that the multiple listing services around the country are not going to be able to advertise a commission for the buyer broker. That was really kind of the essence of the problem. Sellers felt like, hey, why am I paying? That's a separate transaction. I'll pay my listing agent, I'll pay my side, but really the buyer should be paying the buyer broker, the agent, for their share. And so now the multiple listing service can't advertise this anymore. So what's going to happen? Well, we can talk about the various aspects, but a lot of people feel like that buyer broker, the role of that buyer broker, the value of those services are going to come down. And I think they're already seeing it across the country where it's kind of creeping down, because that buyer broker now is going to have to negotiate with the seller, like negotiate price, like negotiate terms, like negotiate conditions on home inspections and so forth. So they're going to be forced to go and ask that seller's agent, hey, are they willing to pay a buyer broker commission? Just going to get it from the buyer. Now, there's going to be some games and semantics with this, a lot of talk. National Association of Realtors, they've done countless calls, countless ways to kind of realtors understand this, help them understand how to talk to their prospective buyers. And there's already stuff coming out that, hey, just ask for some closing help on the property. You can maybe ask for a kind of credit that's going to go and help pay that buyer broker. So we're going to see how this is all going to play out. Feeling is, as an investor and also as a realtor, from what I've seen, is that I still think buyer brokers are going to get paid. I'm not sure by who, but I promise you, if the market is hot, if you're getting multiple people looking at your house and you have multiple offers, those sellers are probably not going to be offering any kind of commission to the buyer broker. They're just going to say next. Now, in a market, kind of a balanced market, or a market where it's favoring buyers, I think certainly sellers will be offering this incentive so they'll bring their buyers in. I also think you're going to see a little bit more of buyers going directly to the listing agent. I'll get to that here in a minute. So you have this quagmire, like who's going to be paying these commissions and how is it going to affect us? And we can break this down a little bit. Let's first talk about listing agents. So a listing agent is clearly defined as someone that's working directly with the seller. They're getting that home prepared. They're getting that home staged in some cases. They're getting any fixes that needs to be done to the house. They're marketing the house in their social media channels, putting on the local multiple listing service. So they're the marketer. They're the one representing the seller. How are they going to be affected? Well, I don't think their commissions are going to be affected. I think actually they might be able to make a little bit more money because, as I said, I think more buyers are going to come directly to them. My brother is getting ready to sell about a $900,000 property that he and his wife has owned many years. And the agent that they're hiring as a listing agent said, listen, if I list the property and someone comes and brings a buyer, I want 2.5%. If the buyer comes directly to me, I want 3%. So he wants an extra 0.5% in order to work with that buyer. Now, again, that comes with a lot of kind of that I'll get into in a minute. So the listing agents, I don't think it's really going to affect. I think they got to be sharp negotiators like they always have been. I think they have to understand that there's going to be some conflicts of interest, and they got to be very careful of that. They are representing the seller. Buyers are going to come to them. The buyers have to understand that. They're basically unrepresented in this huge transaction in their life. Listing agents, I think, are in pretty good shape. The buyer agents are the one that are going to be interesting. There are droves and droves of realtors get out of the business for this very fact. Honestly, the National Association of Realtors have been doing all these kind of blogs and educational Zoom videos talking about all the different things that the buyer broker brings to the buyer. And honestly, as an investor for 25 plus years and a realtor, if the buyer broker did half those things, they'd be worth the money. The reality is, in a lot of cases, they don't do a whole lot. Now, not all, but I'm just saying, as I've seen it, I see the buyers looking online, they're looking at pictures, they're picking out the house, they're picking out the area, and then they call a realtor. The realtor calls me up and says, hey, my buyer saw your property online, he wants to take a look at it. Well, they're opening the door, yes, they're preparing a contract, they might be doing a little negotiating, but is that really worth, on a $500,000 house, is that worth $12,000 to $15,000? Not sure. And who's going to pay that? Are the buyers going to pay that? Maybe. They have the capital and the money to do that. Maybe we'll see them paying them. So a lot of first-time home buyers struggle to gather the down payment money together, gather the closing money down. So coming up with an additional $12,000 to $15,000, I don't know. Will the seller pay a portion of it? Possibly. Depends on the deal, depends on the negotiation. So the buyer agent, in my mind, I think they're going to have reduced commissions, because I can see a scenario where the seller says, hey, I'll pay 1%, or I'll pay a flat rate. I'll pay $5,000 to the buyer broker. I'm not paying $14,000 or $15,000. Maybe the buyer makes it up a little bit. Maybe they get a little concession on the price. So we're just going to have to see how that plays out. But my guess is, and it's a strong guess, strong hunch, the buyer agents, their services, the value of their services, they're going to have to be very good at how they present to buyers, what they're going to bring to the table to earn those commissions. They also have to now have a written agreement with that buyer before they start showing them houses. That's going to be a big change here. So I think the buyer agent's the one that's going to get hurt here a little bit, and I think you're going to see their commissions come down. Again, I think it depends on the market. Now, us as investors that I am, you're out there doing 20, 30 properties a year. Maybe you're doing 10 properties. Let's say you're doing 5 properties, and each of those properties is worth $400,000. Well, a 2.5% commission for a buyer broker to bring you that buyer is roughly 10 grand. If you're doing 5 deals a year, that's $50,000. That's a huge windfall for you if you can structure your deals where someone else is paying that buyer agent. Now, again, depends on the market. Maybe you want those buyers to be flowing in the house. Maybe the market's a little slow. You're more than willing to pay $10,000 to that broker, because on the back end, you're going to make 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, upwards thousands of dollars on your deal. So you're more than willing to pay that money. But I know as myself, as an investor, if I have a good house and it's priced right and it's renovated, I'm going to be a little more reluctant to be paying that buyer broker unless they bring some value. And I'm going to be a hard negotiator on that and see if I can save a little bit of money, like I do always, like in my properties, as I negotiate with my contractors. Again, as investors, one of our goals, our main goal, is to make profit. And so this is just another profit center that we're going to be looking at and negotiating. And again, goes back to the market, see how that plays out. I was a seller. So you're watching this video, part of our group, and you're a seller. Just like my brother's selling his house. You got to make a decision. Are you willing to give up a certain amount of that money to a buyer broker? I'm going to make them ask for it. I'm going to make them negotiate it. But you as a seller, you might say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to pay, $900,000 house. I'm not going to pay $30,000 for someone to come open a door for someone and write a contract. I'm willing to pay $10,000 for that. Services, good rate, but I'm not willing to pay $30,000. So I think as a seller, I think you're going to see more sellers reluctant to be paying these commissions. National surveys show that 85% of sellers are not really keen on paying that buyer broker commission anymore. One gentleman I saw an interview with said, listen, if I got to pay it, I'm just going to bump my house up a little bit in price. Again, that's easy to say. And if the market is cooperating and the market is good and flowing, you might be able to do that. But if the market is stagnant, if we're heading into a recession, if there's not as many buyers, not as much demand for your house, you might be more than willing to pay a 2.5%, 3% broker fee, broker commission for someone to bring that buyer in. So a lot of this, again, I think is unknown. I don't think anyone can tell you for sure, just like I don't think anyone can tell you for sure where our economy is heading. I think we predict it. We can look at history. We can try to make some predictions, but none of us really know. But I think it's safe to say that a lot of this is going to fall down on how good is the real estate market that you're in. If you're in Cincinnati or LA or right now Florida's got a lot of increased inventory. I mean, where market, and that is going to have a direct impact on real estate commissions that you're paying. So my advice to you is just keep an eye on it, talk to other people, maybe talk to sellers, talk to agents, talk to investors, get a feel what's happening. I am really, really curious how this is going to go and play out. I'm listing a property right now. I'm not advertising a buyer commission. I'm waiting for that buyer's agent to come to me and say, are you willing to pay it? And folks, it's going to come down to what's the demand for the house? What kind of price are they offering? What kind of terms and concessions they're offering? It's all just going to be a part of the negotiation. Fortunately, I love to negotiate. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to play out. And as investors, primarily, sellers of real estate, is this going to be another little bump, another little profit center for us that we can factor into our analysis of a good real estate deal? So it's going to be very interesting, and I encourage you to keep an eye on it. Feel free to reach out. If I can help you in any way or talk you through any kind of deal, more than happy to do it. I hope this gave you a little bit of insight of what's going on and how this might play out in our marketplace. So keep an eye on this. It's going to be really, really interesting.